Okay, this is a little off. There we go. So, guys, it is time for the podcast yet again. So, we are starting off. It's Monday. Oh, first off, I hope all you guys are doing well on this glorious Monday. Well, I guess morning, afternoon, depending on where you're at in the world. But I just wanted to talk quickly before we get into it. I just started up my 4-day workshop this morning. We had a bunch of people show up to the first day. It was awesome. If you were there, you know. If you weren't there, you missed out. Make sure that you don't miss out on the next one. Speaking of, I see Alex Tilley coming on. Alex, good seeing you this morning. Yeah, it was really awesome. We talked about making pace a weapon. We talked about the aerobics system. And it was just, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed delivering. I really think we got a lot of really good takeaways. I see somebody asking, do you think it's possible to enter the UFC with just kickboxing experience? Possible, yes. Wise, no. Like, it's mixed martial arts. If you want to do well, you need to be a good mixed martial artist. Like, you need the jiu-jitsu, you need the ground game, you need every piece of the puzzle. Could you make it? Sure, but, what are your goals with it? If you're trying to actually do well, you need a well-rounded game. Don't try to rush it. Try to do it right. And today, guys, with the podcast, we are talking about some excuses that I hear a lot. We are talking about people who only want to start when things are easy. Kickboxing and BJJ, is that good enough? MMA, like, go to an MMA gym, learn mixed martial arts. That would be my best advice. Like, could you get around it? Probably, but MMA is going to be the best way to succeed at a high level in MMA, period. Like, no way around that. But people who want to start when it's easy, people who don't want to start when things are busy. And we're going to talk about first why this is a misguided mindset. And then second, why you need to start and why you need to work while things are busy and continue to improve off of it instead of trying to delay. So we're going to get right into the show, and let's get going in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the #1 show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we are talking about people who only want to start when things are easy. People who don't want to start when things are busy. Now, the reason we're bringing this one to you guys is because this is one of the most common excuses I hear for athletes why they're not pursuing their dreams in their sport. I want to be a UFC champion, but I'm just really busy with work and school right now. So, it's hard to make it to the gym. Or, I want to be a UFC champion, but, life's just crazy right now. So I haven't been training. And we're going to go through a couple of reasons why this mindset is so misguided, but then a couple more reasons why you need to start right now anyway. So first off, guys, if this is you, if you're listening to this and you know that you've said, yeah, I want to achieve insert goal here, but I can't right now because of insert whatever other activity here, understand that what you're doing is you're putting a pause on your dream. If you want to be a UFC champion and you are not working at it right now, you're basically telling yourself and everyone around you that you don't really want to be a UFC champion. Because I don't know about you guys, but even in the start of building a coaching business, this is what I've wanted to do forever. I had no dream of being a UFC champion or, any kind of high-level athletic dream like that. I didn't realize till I was in my 20s that I was a competitive person that liked to win at shit. And at that point, in terms of being a professional athlete, felt a little bit late, and I focused all my energy and loved the idea of being a coach for professional athletes instead. But in the beginning of that, there were a lot of hurdles. I didn't have money. I was working other jobs. I had all this other shit going on. But through 4 years of university, guys, through the summer, I worked my job from 6 o'clock in the morning to noon. And then I got to work with the Montreal Alouettes, a CFL team, from noon to 2. And then I went back to work and worked from about 3 to 9 every day. And the reason I did that, the reason I took that 3-hour break in the middle of the day and didn't spend that doing something for me, but spent that working with the professional football team that was training out of my university, was because I knew I wanted to be a coach. I knew that this is what I wanted to do, so I was willing to sacrifice that little bit of time outside of coaching and outside of school and outside of everything else that I was doing to put more time into actually learning the ropes of what I wanted to do, to put more time into building myself up with credibility, because I knew this is what I wanted my future to be. It's the same thing when I moved out to Calgary. The job I moved into had 0 guaranteed hours. You had to build up your own clientele. And a lot of coaches coming into that job worked another job on the side so that they could make some money while they built up their clientele. And I said no. And the reason I said no was because I wanted to spend every waking minute at the gym. So any minute that a coach said, hey, I need some help, or a coach said, hey, I need someone to cover an hour, I was there with my hand up so I could advance faster. And the result of saying no to working another job was I made less than $1,000 a month for a year. And I was paying for everything out there myself. Now, yes, this led to some very difficult months where I didn't know how I was going to get through the month. And then like on the third last day of the month, I had somebody say, hey, I need 2 hours covered. And that was the $60 I needed to finish actually being able to pay my rent. But the reason that I refused to take another job was because I knew this is going to be my future. I'm not going to get better at what I want to do working a part-time job at a fucking retail store or something like that. I'm going to get better at what I do if I'm in the gym every minute that I can be. And this is the mindset that so many of you guys are lacking. Like, I lived so freaking cheap for that whole year and for years after, because I knew that every dollar I had to go to paying my living expenses so that I could stay here and I wasn't going to be fucking homeless. Now, the way that this mindset comes through with you guys when you're saying that you're not going to put the work into your training right now because you're busy with work or you're busy with school or you got something else going on, you're telling yourself that your goal's not that important. Now, I understand you need the money to pay the bills. I understand you need, all these other things as part of your life. But the important thing you've got to remember is that your goal isn't going away. That goal of wanting to be a UFC champion, it's not going to go away. It's going to keep moving forward. The world of MMA is going to keep moving forward, whether you are on the train or not. And so if you're not putting anything into that goal because you're busy, you're basically saying you're willing to take a massive step back and let everyone else take a step forward without you. Now, the second reason that this is so important, and the second part of this that we want to touch on today, is that being busy is a skill. Being busy and being able to do something successfully anyway is a skill. So if you're listening to this, and again, you're in that position where either, money's tight or you're busy or whatever, and you've taken a step back from pursuing the goals that you have for your sport, understand that the answer is not taking a step away. The answer is figuring out how to manage it. And for that, I'm going to give another example related to me because they're obviously just easy to come up with. But when I started building the business that I own now, in the beginning, it was a few clients. It wasn't a ton of, work every day. I didn't have that much going on. And then little bit by little bit, the business got bigger. And then when I hired my business coaches 18 months ago, 2 years ago, maybe, the business exploded. And as soon as that happened, a couple of thoughts went through my head. Number one, thank God it finally happened. I don't have to worry about how I'm going to pay rent this month. Number two was, holy shit, how am I going to manage this? Because I went from having about 20 clients to having about 60 in the span of 4 months. Now, I don't know if anybody listening to this runs a business or has clients of their own or whatever it might be, but that's not easy. And one of the best expressions that I ever heard in the beginning when I went to one of those business coaching calls and I threw my hand up and said, I am having a lot of trouble managing everything that I've got going on was, first off, isn't this a nice problem to have? Being too busy, having too many people, all of that, which is absolutely true. And the second was plain and simple. New levels bring new devils. And bringing this back to you guys, any athletes listening to this, when you hear that expression, what I'm trying to say is as you move up levels, as you put more on your plate, as you're doing more with your life, you're going to have to learn how to manage it. You're going to have to learn how to fix new problems. So instead of looking to make your life easier by taking things off your plate, stepping back from training, whatever it is, understand that it's your job now, if you actually care about those goals you say are so important to you, it's your job now to figure out how to manage them. So let's say you've got a full-time job, you're trying to train full-time, and you've got a family to take care of. How do you put all of that on your plate and actually do it successfully? Now, maybe that might mean taking a little bit of training off your plate, not training 2 sessions a day, 6 days a week, but it doesn't mean taking it out completely. Because that's the other part, guys, is a lot of athletes, honestly, they train too much. They're not, every training session they do is not making drastic improvements for them. So if you're in a state like this, what I'd encourage you to work on is figuring out what season you're in. And when I say season, what I mean is instead of focusing 100% of your energy on training and letting everything else fall apart, step slightly back from training, commit to the minimum amount that you can absolutely make work every single week, and then work on actually better organizing everything else in your life to make it all work. Because again, the absolute worst thing you can do if you have a high level goal in anything is take a complete step back from it and stop working on it. You need to figure out what amount of work you're actually able to continue doing, what you can keep consistent with, and how you can continue to move forward. And the final piece of this, and the last thing I'm going to touch on today, is if you are trying to be an athlete at the highest level, you want a hard life. Because I promise you, yes, we see the highlights of it all on Instagram and all of that, but any of those UFC champion level athletes, any of those people at the top, any of those people that you see that you're like, man, they're living the life, they're not living easy. They're training multiple times a day. They're working their asses off. The time that they're not training, they're recovering. They're not eating all the foods that they want to eat. That is a hard life that you are choosing. And that's not a bad thing. That's a very good thing. But so many people want the hard life, but on the path to getting there are trying to make their life easier. So think about that. You want to be at this top 1% living this difficult life where you're training multiple times a day. You're spending all that time doing recovery work. You're eating the proper foods. You're doing all the right things. You're making the sacrifices. But along the way to get there, you're trying to make it as easy on yourself as possible. It doesn't make sense. And I understand the impulse. The impulse is make things easier because if it's easier to manage, then I can do it. But instead, what you need to start thinking about and the mindset shift you need to start making is you need to start focusing on trying to make yourself better equipped to handle it instead of making what your actual load is lighter. Does that make sense? Because if you're just trying to take things off your plate, what do you think is going to happen when you do reach those high levels, if you do reach those high levels? Shit's not going to get easier. You're not going to make it to the UFC and then all of a sudden, you don't have to train as much and life's easy and you don't have that much going on. No, it's going to keep getting busier. It's going to keep getting harder. You're going to keep having new problems and new issues that pop up. But if you've taught yourself in the beginning how to better manage your schedule, how to handle those hard things when they come up, how to handle and how to create a difficult life and how to become the person who's able to manage that more difficult life, then when you step into that higher level, it's easy. It's an easy transition. But if you spend your whole life trying to make it easier, you're not going to make it to that top level. And even if you do, you're not going to understand how to handle it. So stop wishing for things to be easier. Stop trying to make things easier and start working on making yourself better. Figure out where you have the flaws. Figure out what you struggle with. Is it time management issues? Is it, prioritizing certain activities? Is it organization? Where do you struggle that is causing you to feel like you need your life to be easier? And what's one thing you can start doing that's going to help you manage it? So guys, I hope, I hope that was helpful. I hope you've got a little bit of a perspective shift. I hope you're thinking about things a little bit differently. If you got any good value out of that, I'd love to know what it was. Make sure that if you're here live right now, drop a comment and let me know what you took away. If you're listening back to this on the podcast, on the YouTube channel, anywhere else, make sure that you drop a comment. Shoot me a message across any of my social media platforms. The ways to do that are going to be in the show notes below for you. And finally, my biggest ask of all of you is if you did get value from this episode or other ones, share it with a friend, share it with a teammate, share it with a coach, share it with somebody else who's going to benefit from this message. So guys, as always, I appreciate you all. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Guys, I'm going to stick around for a couple minutes, answer a couple of questions. So anybody who, if you were here for the podcast, if you